Hello everyone, and welcome back to this corner of Tevat. Inazuman Chronicled Wish banner is here, and with 8 limited 5-star characters and weapons, it looks quite tempting. But hold your pulse yet, and let's evaluate this banner together. In the next 20 minutes, I will talk to you about Chronicled Wish banner mechanics, discuss which characters still hold a good place in meta, and would be amazing to pull for, or lose your 50-50 to, and which weapons are worth getting even if you might not have a corresponding character, so you can spend your wishes wisely. Chronicled Wish mechanics are a little bit different compared to usual limited wish banners. To begin with, before pulling you must set your Chronicled pass by selecting either a 5-star character or a 5-star weapon. If you lose 50-50 on a Chronicled Wish banner, you're losing it to a character or a weapon out of those on the banner, not from the standard pool. If your Chronicled pass is set to a character and you lose the 50-50, you get one of the featured characters. And if your Chronicled pass is set to a weapon, you will get one of the featured weapons. If you happen to lose 50-50, you obtain 1 fate point. Once you have a fate point, your next 5-star is guaranteed to be the one you've chosen as your Chronicled pass. When you obtain the desired character, or a weapon, your fate point is reset back to 0. Changing your Chronicled pass while in possession of a fate point will also make you lose it, so select your pass carefully before pulling. If you don't have enough wishes to guarantee a desired character, your unclaimed fate point is not going to be carried over to the future Chronicled Wish banner. The wish guarantee count for the Chronicled Wish is separate from the guarantee count for the limited wish banners. Even if you have put some wishes in the limited banner before, they are not going to count for the Chronicled Wish, and you are going to start from 0. Unless you have put on the previous Chronicled Wish banner, because the wish banner count is shared between Chronicled Wish banners. Every 10 wishes are guaranteed to bring you at least 1 4-star, and every 90 wishes you're guaranteed a 5-star. Lastly, Capture and Radiance mechanic that prevents you from losing 3 50-50 in a row doesn't work for Chronicled Wish banners. Let's take a look at featured 5-star characters on a Chronicled Wish banner. I'm going to evaluate them from both points of view, one being pulling specifically for them, and the second one being losing your 50-50 to them, as well as touching on constellations in case you already own the character but are considering someone else on the banner. Starting with Kokomi. Did you know that Hydra is an element with the most 5-star characters? Soon to be tied with Cryo with announced release of Skirk in the version 5.7. 5th most owned Hydra 5-star, Kokomi still manages to hold her own in this extremely competitive environment, shifting her best teams with major version updates. Being a Catalyst user, Kokomi can hold thrilling tales of Dragon Slayers, 3-star weapons that buff the attack of the character that you switch into. Combined with consistent AoE Hydra application and low on-field time, Kokomi was a go-to Hydra support for Ayaka freeze for some time. With the release of Sumeru, and especially Nilo, Kokomi became a reliable teammate in both Hyper Bloom teams and Nilo's Bloom. Lastly, with the release of Furina and recent additions of Silonan and Escafie, Kokomi now has an option of being an on-field DPS in Mono Hydra teams. Alternatively, you can always play Kokomi in a Taser team as a Hydra driver, but these teams seem to perform slightly worse than previously discussed ones. Kokomi's early constellations are underwhelming to the point of her being a limited 5-star with the least owned constellations in the game, so if you already have Kokomi at C0, her addition somewhat dilutes the banner's value for you. But if you don't have Kokomi at all, losing 50-50 to her is not a problem. She has a good variety of teams and playstyles, synergizes well with many strong and popular characters, and overall has aged gracefully over the years. Moving on to Yae Miko, strong electric character that is very resin efficient to build. Just like Kokomi, Yae has diverse playstyles. From strictly off-field electro applicator to enabling unique double DPS setups. What's even more impressive is that Yae is above any competition. You would think that having properly built Fischl would make summoning for Yae less appealing, but it doesn't. These two can be successfully played together. Same with electro carries, such as already mentioned Raiden Shogun and Clarin. Off-field Yae deals respectable damage, and on-field, she is capable of filling the gaps in the team rotations with her high damage burst. Yae's constellations are all valuable. Her C1 lowers her energy requirements, while all subsequent constellations increase her damage, with C4 being an electric damage boost for the entire team. Yae Miko's addition to Chronicled Wish raises Banya's value by a lot, for both players who haven't summoned her yet and players who already have her. She complements many already strong characters pretty well, and there are very few account situations where you actively wouldn't want to have her. Next up is Yoimiya. Often sandwiched between Archons or highly anticipated debuts and reruns, Yoimiya has okayish ownership rates, but is rarely picked up for Abyss runs. Is she that bad? Frankly speaking, no, not really. Yoimiya deals the majority of her damage through normal attacks, which means no jump cancelling needed, no time spent charging, just simple click click click. Lack of Yoimiya's reliance on burst to deal damage makes her valuable in dealing with enemies that drain your team's energy, such as wish-ups and Wayo manifestations. If you already have Yoimiya, unfortunately her constellations are inconsistent. Her C2 and C6 are great damage boosts, but to obtain them, you will have to first go through negligible previous constellations. Low Yoimiya's usage is most likely due to tougher competition among Spyro on-field DPS characters, rather than Yoimiya's performance herself. But being a Pyro character can be seen as an advantage too. Because of her element, Yoimiya has access to many reactions. Vaporize with classic Double Hydro, Melt enhanced by recently released characters, Burning and Overload. If you don't already have two Pyro drivers, maybe it's finally the time to summon Yoimiya. Speaking of DPS characters who have fallen out of grace, Itto is a Geo main DPS, who was originally most often played in mono Geo teams. Nowadays, general buffers such as Furina and Silonen became Itto's best teammates, but at the cost of ditching perfectly tailored for him Goro, in favor of another element to activate Silonen's buffs. With Silonen at C2, you can bring Goro back to the team, while keeping Silonen's Geo resistance shred, but the role of Furina's stack generation will be left completely to Goro, requiring you to have at least his C4. You could also consider Plunge playstyle with Sinyun, since Itto has good scaling on his Plunge attack, but as a Geo DPS, he won't benefit from very decent Vanilla shred, so it's not often recommended. Since his release, Itto hasn't gotten buffed through new artifact sets or weapons, so he feels somewhat lost in Inazuman Mist, and his usage rate unfortunately reflects that. To make matters worse, Itto's early constellations are insignificant, with only C5 and C6 being notable damage increases. So when it comes to Itto, if you like the character and have his best of field sub-DPS units, go for it. But strictly speaking, I can't recommend him from a meta standpoint, especially when a stronger Geo DPS already exists, and typically you won't encounter situations where you might need two of those. Recently I have made a video about Ayaka and her role in the meta. Just like Itto, Ayaka's position in the meta has been slowly fading, but unlike Itto, Ayaka has been quietly gathering upgrades and finally got that final push which shot her back to being a strong character, not even just in AoE situations, but against bosses too. Escafee's Cryo Shred and personal field damage elevate Ayaka's freeze to the top tier. In this team, she is resin efficient to build, sporting Morichusi Hunter set, and can be comfortably played with a 4-star craftable weapon. Triple Cryo setup eliminates energy issues that Ayaka used to have in the past, being so reliant on her burst to deal most of her damage. All that comes at the cost of needing at least Escafee and Furina, but preferably Shinhe too, which makes for quite an expensive and inflexible team. If you already have Ayaka, her early constellations go from decent to very good. Her C1 used to be considered insignificant, but in teams with Escafee, the rotation becomes more flexible, so a reduction to E skill cooldown comes in handy. After that, C2, C3, C4 are all good constellations that you would be pleased to lose your 50-50 to if you like playing Ayaka. Keeping it in the family, Ayato has always been less popular than his sister, but maybe it's time to change that. While Ayato lacks personal damage compared to younger Hydra DPS units, he makes up for it in a team variety. Firstly, he deals good damage with Bennett Xianlin core duo, making for a good very low cost team. Secondly, he's an excellent driver in all Bloom archetypes. Thirdly, high Hydro application makes Ayato viable in electric charge teams. Lastly, Escafie had a positive impact on Ayato too, elevating Freeze archetype. Such variety of teams is followed by a variety of artifact set options, so you probably already have a good set for him, you just don't know it yet. One could argue that Ayato loses too much damage without limited weapons, although he isn't very picky as long as it's luxury. His constellations are good for increasing his damage, with C1 and C5 being the least impactful ones. While personal damage on a lower side and long cooldowns make Ayato a less compelling character to pull for, a variety of possible teams and builds makes a 50-50 loss feel like a win instead. One of the most overlooked 5-star characters, Chiori, suffers from a restriction on her kit that halves her damage if you don't play her with a Geo character capable of creating a Geo construct. At C1, this restriction is diminished to needing just a Geo character. Speaking of constellations, all Chiori's constellations are good to have, with each one providing more and more damage. Maybe because of that, Chiori is the most owned C6 in the game. You just can't stop getting upgrades for her. Because of Chiori's kit restrictions, her best teammates are obvious. But with Geo being such an underpopulated element, it's not a lot of team building freedom. Chiori's saving grace is making a core with either Zhongli at C0 or Silona at C1 that will carry any DPS that is capable of dealing damage without relying too much on reactions. Chiori's addition to the Chronicled Wish increases Vanya's value by a lot. While not a lot of players would find pulling for a character and their C1 to fix kits issues valuable, it certainly is valuable to get the strong off-field Geo unit and her upgrades while pulling for other characters. Last but not least is Kazuha. It's pretty unlikely that you don't have him yet, but if you don't, it's the perfect banner to pull for him. Between strong personal damage, holding Viridescent Venerer, buffing elemental damage through his Ascension passive, on-demand grouping for crowd of enemies, and strong first constellations, Kazuha is a top pick for most accounts. Even with the release of several strong general and situational supports, and totally getting power crept in the exploration mechanics, Kazuha still has incredible utility. The 4-star roster for Inazuman Chronicled Wish banner is restricted to, you've guessed it, Inazuman 4 stars. If you are missing them or their constellations, it's a good way of increasing your odds. Let's quickly go through each one. Kuki Shinobu is a great 4-star character, most often used in Hyperbloom teams that are usually quite free-to-play friendly and are capable of dealing good damage at low investments. Out of all Inazuman 4 stars, she has the best abuse usage rate. Her early constellations, namely C1 and C2, make her even better in Hyperbloom trigger roll, so if you don't have her at C2 yet, it's high time to pick her up. Shinobu's Pyro counterpart is Soma. Easily the most overlooked 4-star in the past, nowadays he's one of the 2 characters in the game capable of being a reliable burgeon driver, and is sometimes picked as a shielder and a buffer for these 5-star on-field characters. He is a lot more constellation hungry, with his C4 being almost necessary to fulfill his energy requirements, and C6 giving a boost to normal attacks of your on-field DPS. Loyal Shogun supporter Kujo Sara is next. She is mostly used with Electro DPS characters, and her constellations, C1, C2 and C6, are valuable increases to her buffing potential. Goro gets to shine occasionally as a Geo buffer. If you like playing Noel or Itto, who is also on the Chronicled Wish banner, then Goro and his constellations will be useful to you. Dendra Shielder Kirara can be played as a supportive and defensive units in Quicken teams, although she is outclassed by many other Dendra characters. Obtaining her 4th constellation fixes her low Dendra application, and her C6 gives universal elemental damage % buff, increasing her utility. Animo Shielder Sayo has unfortunately been outclassed by many characters, even within her own element. That being said, she can still find a spot in mono pyro teams or as electric charge driver, and her 1st constellation is very valuable. Lastly, Animo DPS Heizo has unique playstyle of being a melee catalyst, but just like Sayo, he has faced strong competition. From anime units released after him, as well as some older characters. Still, decent personal damage, the ability to hold very decent Venerer, some grouping on the burst. Heizo is a jack of all trades and gets slightly better with every constellation. Characters finally out of the way, let's consider the weapon selection. This banner has some of the best swords all in one place. Oraku Misugiri is a generally good stat stick with a fairly simple passive that increases normal attack and elemental skill damage. If a GU unit is present in the team with a wielder, that bonus is doubled. So while it is the best in slot for Chiori, it's also pretty good for Albedo and Furina, if you are playing the latter with a GU teammate. Ayato's signature buffs elemental damage and normal attacks, thus being also good for Kitsin, Clarinde and Ayaka. The only downside of the weapon is crit rate as a main stat. Half of the characters who easily benefit from the passive already have a lot of options to increase their crit rate. Miss Splitter Reforged grants crit damage, albeit a lower amount compared to Oraku Misugiri, and buffs elemental damage on several conditions. Besides Ayaka, it's good for her brother, and other characters that deal damage with normal attacks and burst equally, Kitsin and Alhaitham. Kazuha's signature Freedom Sworn buffs elemental mastery, but the main appeal is in its passive that buffs entire team's attack, normal, charged and plunge attack damage. So it will be good for sword carrying support characters such as Jin, Celonan and Kuki Shinobu. Redhorn Stone Thresher is a 5-star claymore that buffs normal and charged attack damage, scaling with defense. Itto is the only character who can utilize the passive fully, but with a lot of crit damage as a main stat, it's a great option for Gamin, Diluc and Die. Kagura's Verity is a catalyst that buffs skill and elemental damage. Its elemental passive requires your character to be able to use 3 elemental skills within 16 seconds, which is not something a lot of characters are capable of, with an exception of Yae herself and Varese. 5-star Bow, Thundering Pulse, buffs attack percent and normal attack damage. Besides Yoimiya, there are not a lot of bow characters that use normal attacks to deal damage, but with crit damage as a main stat and unconditional attack percent buff, it's decent for Tartaglia, Lini and Fischl. But no weapon banner could be complete without one weapon that ruins everything, right? Kokomi's signature, Everlasting Moonglow, buffs HP percent, normal attacks scaling with the same HP percent, and gives healing bonus. It's not even that good on Kokomi herself, and when it comes to other characters, HP scaling Moani doesn't want it, and while Healer Baiju could wear it, he still has better 4-star options. 4-star weapon pool consists of usual options of Favonius and Sacrificial collections, Lion's Roar, the Flute, Rain Slasher, the Bell, Dragon's Bane, Eye of Perception, Rust, the Stringless and the Vizis. Additionally, you can get 3 weapons from the Watatsumi series that all share a passive of buffing elemental burst damage based on your entire party's combined maximum energy capacity. Characters that can utilize this passive are as follows. Claymore Aquamaro is a decent 4-star option for Aola and Die. Bow Moon's Moon can be carried by Elan at higher refinement levels. And the Polearm Wavebreaker's Fin is the most versatile one, being a great option for Shenhe and Raiden Shogun. It could also be wielded by Candice and Xianlin, assuming you can meet their energy needs without energy recharge main stat, and the thought of fishing for the catch is giving you headaches. To sum it up, Inazuman Chronicled Wish provides pretty good value. Outside of few exceptions, majority of the characters would be a nice addition to your account. Some early constellations would help your already owned characters to feel stronger, and the 5-star sword selection is splendid. But do remember that due to separate current account and fate point not being carryable to the future possible banner, you shouldn't touch this banner if you don't have at least 160 pulls to guarantee the character you want. Are you going to be pulling on the Chronicled Wish banner? If so, for whom? Do you low-key hope to lose your 50-50? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!